Hiya. Okay, welcome to Ruben's Woodcrafts, and I have another Sorrento puzzle box to restore. Someone found my previous video of the previous Sorrento box that I restored on the internet, and they said that they've got one that seriously needs repair. They've sent it over to me. I've just had a good look at it, and I have to say it's in dire need of repair. You wait till you see this. Okay, it's really sad actually. I shouldn't be laughing, but it's sacrilege, and the story that goes behind it, it's not too great either. But there you go. One seriously warped lid on the top of the box. Now the other thing is the bottom is also warped. In fact, the whole carcass altogether is actually warped. To start with, I thought it was just the lid, and I was told that it looked like it was just the lid, but when I come to lay it flat on the table, the bottom is also warped. I don't know if you can see there, but there is a gap forming just here that signifies that the bottom is warping. If I turn it around from the opposite corner, in the opposite one, is it opposite? No, yeah, it is opposite corner, an even bigger gap, which means that is actually twisted completely. It's the same style, pretty much almost the same style as the previous one that I restored, only it is actually smaller, and the lining inside is actually felt and not velvet. So I've got a lot to do, and just to quickly show you what I mean about the bottom being warped, let's get you here. Now, as you can see, I've just placed it flat on my table, and let me just get the camera so it's absolutely still, and then you can see what happens to the box when I move it. At the moment it looks like it's laying flat on the table. If I push one quarter, I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but I can certainly feel it, and you can hear it. See that? That's rocking at this corner and this corner underneath. Let's see if we can get a better look at this. See that? It's worse there. So, and it's starting to split at the join there where the lid is. So I think it is a case of having to take the whole thing apart and try and get it flattened off, pressed. So wish me luck. Okay, just taken the lid off. There's the fittings there, and it's just a few more things that I've discovered as I was doing this that I forgot to mention. There is, don't know if you can see it, but there's a slight ring, coffee cup ring or hot cup ring in the finish there, and also the let's see if we can get this in the right light. Very hard to see, but you see that inlay's bubbled up, which needs to be glued and pressed down back in. Now that's not so much a problem. The problem is the velvet, or it's not really velvet, it's like felt, but it's glued in with Scotch glue, which is a nightmare. The other thing I noticed also was that, I don't know, you can see that bow in the front there where the lock is. It bows into the middle of into the inside of the box, so that's going to have to be flattened out as well. Oh, what have I taken on? Yeah, and the yeah, also the lock is moving. Gotta find a way of putting that back on again. I think what I may have to do is take off the material, unfortunately, so I can see what I'm doing and do the repairs I'm supposed to do, and then replace the material inside. So it means I'm going to have a word with my client about this. The plot thickens. Okay, so I've been given the go ahead to take the felt out, so that makes the job a little bit easier. So I've taken this light blue felt out. Now what you can see on this piece here is rust coming away from the lock, which was, here's the lock, considerable amount of rust on it. Still works very well, held in by these tiny little pins, little tacks, not screwed in, but little tiny tacks. Interesting, fascinating. So component bits is all apart at the moment. I may have to take the main carcass apart. As you can see, it's that gap there, this piece of wood, this piece here is warped away, so that needs flattening. So some of these sides will have to be carefully taken apart and flattened down. I have the just go through here underneath my heavy 2-ton jack. It's actually with the weight that it lifts and not what it actually weighs, but when you carry it about it feels like it weighs 2 tons. But sandwiched in between these two pieces of plywood here, don't know if you can see that, but the bottom of the box, I've slightly dampened down the wood, and I've sandwiched it between these 2 pieces of ply. And yeah, it's see if we can get its memory back to the shape it was supposed to be. Okay, so I'll come back with another update. Okay, I've cleaned up the lid, the inside of the lid, and I've also put it under this heavy car jack, a lot of weight, and again sandwiched, and now you can see it a bit more clearly. I've got the bottom of the box and I've got the lid of the box, and with I put some moisture inside the lid, put a bit of water inside it just to give it some flexibility when it gets the pressure on there, so the water soaks into the timber, and so it gives it a bit more flexibility. If it's too dry it becomes brittle and it will split. So I'm probably talking a bit funny because I've got my head upside down when I'm looking at this. It's quite low down, but you can see that the pressure of this weight that's on top is actually making the lid lie flatter than it was before. and I can already see I've only had it in there for about 10 minutes and it's already starting to go down at the corners, so fingers crossed, hopefully at the end of the week that would have dried out, and it'll be as straight as a die. Fingers crossed. There's no guarantees, by the way, but one can hope. Okay. Also pleased and relieved to report that the main carcass came apart quite easily without any splitting, without bits being broken. The component parts, it all came apart quite easily. I just knocked it, tapped it with a hammer, and it came away at the joints quite nicely. These got pins in the end, but I tapped out the bottom first. It's always pinned at the front there, whereas here it's actually got a groove down and it's just been rebaited in. I think it's a good solid joint, and plus this piece is actually straight and flat, so I'm going to leave this as it is. The straight edge of the bottom that's gone in here, gone into here, actually keeps this piece quite straight, so which is important really, because that is the hinged back. So it's probably just slightly off there, but what I'll do is I'll probably cramp a piece of timber across there just to straighten that out, just along the top. So I'll need to clean that up inside there. This here is definitely, as I showed you before, is warped. It's I've got a flat surface. Where's a flat surface? This is flat surface, and you see that just lifts. Yeah, you can see that lifting on the left there. If I pushed on the left, lifts at the right. This will need to be weighted down and flattened, but I'll clean that up first as well. But it all came apart very easily. I'm really relieved about that. It makes my job even more easier. So happy days. This is going to be good. I'm relieved. Catch you later. Okay, I thought I'd show you what's involved when cleaning the old blue felt stuff and Scotch glue that it was glued on with. There's another piece here. You can see that's just as bad, if not worse. In order to clean it off, this is what you do. Now, I was taught this in one of my first jobs when I did my antique restoration training. My first job was to actually take apart drawers for Chester drawers, take them apart because they were falling apart, and basically clean out the old glue, which would be animal glue. And the way to do that is to get a sharp chisel. Yeah, nice sharp chisel. You can put it on a bench or hold it in a vise depending on the size of the piece. Here I'm able to rest it on my knee quite nicely, and you just basically scrape it. Just scrape it. Don't dig into it, just feel it scraping across and almost like planing that old glue, Scotch glue off. Yeah, it's quite a bit of build up here, so I'm able to just carefully That's rather tough, so you may have to give it a bit of welly. This is probably not the safest way, by the way. No, you don't want to dig the chisel in your knee, but I am actually being careful here. I've got a good degree of control over what I do here, so that's alright. Bit of Scotch glue down the joint, just scrape that out. Now the thing is, if you're doing a chest of drawers, it'll most likely be dovetail joints. You will have to have patience and use probably a smaller chisel to clean in between the gaps. Okay. Now it doesn't matter too much if you can't get all the glue off. As long as the surface is level, it's okay. And you know that that glue's not likely to come off ever again anyway. Sometimes it hardens up and crystallizes and it becomes almost like a resin. It becomes part or set into the grain of the timber. If that's the case, don't go overboard in trying to get that out. It'll be fine as long as you get the majority of it off. You've got some decent gluing surface, it'll be fine. Okay, so I've just got a bit of old scrap sandpaper. It's not even a really coarse grit, it's almost used to the point that it's become a bit fine. Okay, just sand that up, clean it up. Again, it doesn't have to be overboard because it's the inside of the box. That's the outside, polished up still. Try not to scratch that. But since this is the inside, it gets covered up anyway, so it won't be seen. But it's nice just to tidy it up so it makes the job clean. The other thing is we probably do need some wood revealed here so that it soaks up some of the water that I'll be adding to it in order to flatten the piece, make it level again. Just go inside that rebate there. There you have it. One cleaned up piece, side piece. On to the next one. Just put that over there. So again, you can see all that really horrible bluey. Careful when you do the edges. Don't do this. If you take away that edge, it becomes less effective as a joint. You need to keep the edges crisp as possible. can see that, but there's a big blob of glue right there. That is glue. You see that? It's snapped. Dried animal glue just crystallises. Just scrape that out if you can. Taking care not to break any of the wood part. Okay, I've got all the parts nicely cleaned. So I got this, the inside of the box, back plate and the bottom, all nicely cleaned and sanded up. And I was going to clamp it between two pieces of wood in order to get this straight here, but when I actually put a flat piece of wood onto it, it's not that bad. Don't know if you can see that, but that's not bad at all. It's fine. I wouldn't say it's absolutely perfect, but then it's not meant to be perfect. When Sorrento boxes are made, they're not actually made to be perfect. Funny enough, there's still a bit of rusticness going on, if you can call it that. Things like the small details where sanding is concerned in finishing, it's not perfect, and the way the wood is actually, it's not even been machined by a machine, it actually looks like it's been handcrafted really, so you're gonna get imperfections with handcrafted. So and if the wood isn't absolutely bang on, absolutely accurately straight, then that's the way it was made, and you have to accept that, and that's fine by me. It's an old, it's supposed to be an old box. They are old boxes. They're not meant to be absolutely bang on perfect, but if you can get them as good as they need to be, then that's fine. So I'm not going to bother clamping this piece. It seems absolutely fine. It's probably the only piece that is absolutely no problem whatsoever. The sides are not not a big deal either. However, I'm going to keep them clamped together because there is actually moisture in my workshop. It is quite cold down here, and where it's cold it can be perhaps a little damp. Now the thing is, it is dry down in my workshop, it's just a tad cold. So there has to be some sort of moisture in the atmosphere, and I don't want this to be soaking it all up and then it goes over to the States and suddenly shrinks when all the moisture evaporates out of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep these clamped to hold this position that they're at the moment. So I'm just going to have that in between two pieces of wood like that. I was going to put some clamps on that, and we'll keep it like that. We'll leave it to one side until such time we need it for gluing together. Now for the main concern, which is this here, that's the front with the keyhole, and if you remember I was demonstrating that it is warped, it rocked, if you remember. We need to try and flatten that out. Now I've got some wood here, just need a little block of something for that same thickness just to keep that flat. It's roughly about there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp this, or I can spritz it with water first. So a little sprinkling of water. Let that soak in. In fact, just before I go, I've got that watered up, got it moistened up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use these old bits of felt that I took off just to protect the face. I don't want it marking the polish on the front too harshly. Even though it's going to be polished over again, I just don't want to make it worse than it is. So that's what I'm going to do, and then I'm just going to clamp it flat like that. All the best, catch you later. Howdy folks. Okay, it's been like a good couple of weeks or more since I've been trying to press this the parts of the Sorrento box, the one that's been warped. I don't know why I'm recapping there, because it's all going to be part of the same video. Dull. But I've been trying to press the warpage out of this Sorrento box, especially the lid part, because that was really bad. And last week I had a look at the other parts of the box, and they all pressed together. They all seem to have gone fine. They're all nice and flat now, and I can work with them, which is great. But the lid of the box still had a dip in the lid. The actual frame around the edge, they were flat because I had a board across the top of it, but the actual lid had a curve to it. And I'm now just going to check it. I'll show you what I've done here. So, I don't know if you can see that, but that's the box lid, and in it is sat a roll of lead flashing, which is pretty heavy and at a decent size as well, just to fit inside the lid of the box. Now that was the part that I needed to press outwards, because it was bowing into the box, if you know what I mean. And inside of here I had a bit of a well of water just to soak in there, just to give it a bit of moisture to flex without splitting, and then just let it dry. And it's been drying all week, and all that water's evaporated and soaked away, and that's been sat there drying, and I'm now going to have a look and see how we did. So I'm just going to take this weight off, which is very heavy, especially if you're doing it one-handed. And so here's the lid. Everything's still intact, which is great. There's a bit of inlay that's lifted a little bit, but it's all still together, so I'm just going to have to treat that very carefully. But let's see how we did with the lid. And look at that, nice and flat. It's probably a very minuscule gap, but for an old box I would say that was very acceptable. So that turned out very well indeed. Very relieved about that. So now I can commence working on it and just fix a few pieces here and there, reassemble it, and sand it up, put the fittings back in, and put the interior back in. I'll have to replace it with new interior, but I'm thinking I might try and get the same stuff as what it was lined with before, which was that very light blue felt. So we'll see how we get on first. Okay, I'll come back to you and I'll get a bit more done. just to quickly show you, I've just put a bit of glue in here, just letting that ease in, and I've got a bit of black line to put in there. Press that in. I've already done the patch here. These areas were lifting as part of the inlay. It's drying already, that. And that's down now. Just need to lightly sand those areas. Basically, it's not going to be absolutely perfect, but it's going to stop it from moving. And we don't want to lose these tiny little squares, because that's what they are. They're tiny little squares. So leave that to dry, and give that a light sand up. Very light, probably just even a steel wool as well, and we'll try and get rid of this cup ring that's on here, which I'm not impressed about at all. I mean, why would you leave a cup on top of that? That's just sacrilege, in my opinion. But we'll see what we can do with that. Howdy folks. Okay, finally getting to put this box back together again. The lid's gone down as much as it possibly can. I left it without weight on top of it, and it kind of gone back a little bit, warped. So I've sanded down the edges a bit so it should fit nicely to the rest of the box frame. But I've put it back under pressure again to try and get a bit more of that warpage out. But trouble is with warpages, it's no guarantee that it'll ever stay that way. But it's not as bad as it was before, and I mean, it was really bad before, but it's a hell of a lot better now. So time to put this box back together again, and I've got everything laid out, ready to cramp together. I'm using, so look, there we go, traditional animal glue. This is, you see it in forms of little tiny beads. You pour the beads into this little tiny, what's known as a pot kettle. It's like an inner bit. Inside the bigger bit is boiling water, and you put your glue in there, beads of glue, add a little water and boil it up, and it should all melt out to this kind of consistency, and it smells lovely. Not. Animal glue, where does it come from? Well, cows mainly. I mean, cows, when they go through the slaughterhouses, every bit of them is used, including the bone, and the bone is ground up and mashed, and some other chemicals put with it or something, I'm not entirely sure, but it makes the glue, and it makes animal glue, all kinds of glue actually, but this animal glue here, or Scotch glue as they like to call it, is definitely a cabinet maker's glue, a traditional one, used for hand veneering, jointing, pretty much everything back in the day. before my time. Anyway, we'll get this. Let's get this going. You have to work pretty quickly with it because when it dries, starts going off, it goes a bit gloopy. Goes like a jelly to start with, and then it goes to a very hard type of crystal. Need to do that edge there. So you have to be pretty quick with this. Doesn't help if you have a cold workshop like I do. So I just put a little bit of pressure with the clamps there because I still need to move this about to make sure it's all correct. And I need to make sure that I clamp it so that it all stays flat and level. Just being rather annoying. There we go. It's pulling up now. Push that down tight. Just make sure that is square. Certainly looks it. So we'll see how we do with that. Let that dry. In the meantime, we can start polishing the other pieces up. Okay, so I finally have this finished. It's all polished up, as you can see. Hope you can see that alright. And it all went back together quite well, as you can see. The lid is actually sitting nicely on top of the box. The lid closes now. So, just to demonstrate, pretty much the same as the previous Sorrento box. These open up the same way. There's my key. Quite stiff now. Whole section forward, centerpiece comes down, and we just unlock that. And as you can see, I've lined the inside as well. Looks very nice. Darn sight better than it was before. But, so put that back on again. I'll lock it. Which way is it? That way? Yeah, it's that way. It's interesting, you can actually double lock this. So that's one, that's two, it's double locked. Interesting, didn't know that. So that's back up, push that back in. It's all pretty the key in there. And there we have it, job done. Got to send that back to my client and hopefully they will be pleased with that. So, anybody else want a Sorrento box restoring? Thanks for watching. All the best.